how our shooting shoulder is aligned to the basket becomes very, very important, right? So a lot of times I like to tell players, think about like you're almost throwing a dart. We want to bring that shooting shoulder forward and to the rim, right? Because it keeps everything in line up this right side. Now, we would never start a form shot, or we never purposely would start a form shot with our shooting shoulder behind the left. Because what's going to happen? All right, so if I'm here in this position and I start with my shoulder backwards, eventually to shoot, this has to rotate, right? So I would start here and everything has to rotate forward, and it's harder to time out, right? It's one of those things that it doesn't make a lot of sense because we're adding a whole bunch of movement to the shot that we necessarily don't need, right? So if we're shooting a form shot, right, we're just really working on maybe some fundamental aspects of our 1-2 through or something like that. My shooting shoulder is always going to be just a slightly forward, right? Could be 10 toes to the rim, but even then what's going to happen is things are going to shift a little bit, right? But so let's say I incorporate a little bit of a tilt. My shooting shoulder is here, and now I'm going to work on my form this way. Okay, so really simple concept that most of us do naturally. Where this becomes problematic for a lot of players is actually when we go off the dribble strong side, right? So this is where I've experimented a ton with players, and sometimes it's unavoidable depending on where that foot gets to on our second step, which I'll show here in a second. But what we're going to try to do is we're going to try to make sure we get our strong side foot around every single time going to our strong side in general, by implementing what I call it's like a 1 foot drop. Okay, it's like it's a drop. I implement these a lot into our shooting routine, and off of 1-2 we can do something a little bit similar. But if I'm a right-handed player, I tend to find more comfort going left, right? And the reason being is when I go left, as soon as I start this dribble left, my shooting shoulder is already aligned. If I was left-handed, it'd be the opposite. Me going right, as soon as I stop here, my shooting shoulder is aligned. I don't have to worry as much about my feet getting my foot around because my shooting shoulder is already where it needs to be. I'm able to align everything up. Really simple concept to understand there, right? But when I start to go strong side, things change a little bit because if I'm going right, now I 1-2 step it. So I lead with this leg here. This leg, my right leg, has to come all the way around because if it doesn't, now I'm at that disadvantage where my right shoulder, my shooting shoulder is further from the rim, which means eventually mid-shot, I'm going to have to turn my upper body. Now, any movement in the shot whatsoever, aside from just being able to go as straight up and down as possible, makes the shot more difficult than it has to be. So how do we counter that, right? How do we start to make sure we get this shooting shoulder around? And it's by dropping our right hip while going that strong side, right? So from this position here, when I would go right hand dribble, left foot step here, what I'm going to think about doing now is when this right leg comes around, I think about sinking my hips to the floor, and that's going to allow me to get to a super athletic level, a super balanced level, and it's going to bring my shoulder forward. A very common thing that happens is we go here, we stop right here, and we stand up tall before we end up moving that basketball, and it's really hard to get our balance and get the energy into the ball the same way. So you'll see as a right-handed player or a left-handed player going left, it's hard to do. So what we do in this position is we step, and now once this foot starts to come around, we sink down and drop our hips to this level. So much like a drop that I implement with a lot of players when we start to work on balance and posture, we're doing almost a 1 foot drop where that foot sinks into the ground to ensure that I get it all the way around, and now I'm able to go up into my shot, okay? Really, really small little detail. Just make sure when you're doing this though, that the chest stays up the whole way. So my chest is up, my chin is up, my eyes are up, I'm here, and when I sink down, I'm just taking my level down, my chest isn't going with it, and that's going to allow me to be super balanced, right, in a super athletic position, and then able to take advantage of moving the ball up my body without my body having to adjust, and then knocking down that shot on balance each and every time.